Good morning. My name is Jay Tiefenbrunn. My pronouns are she, her, and I am delighted to serve as your Director of Music Ministries. It is my pleasure this morning to welcome you to worship with the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Nashville. As Unitarian Universalists, our spiritual paths vary, but in this congregation we have made a covenant together. We affirm our interdependence. We celebrate our differences and work for justice. We are a welcoming congregation, and we deepen our relationships as we serve our congregation's mission to create community, nurture spiritual growth, and act on our values in the broader world, guided by reason and compassion. I'd like to extend a special welcome to visitors worshiping with us this morning. If you are seeking a spiritual home, we hope that you may find it here. If you have questions about our congregation, please contact our Assistant Minister for Congregational Life, the Reverend Denise Gouch. You can find her email address in the staff directory under Contact Us on our website. If you're worshiping with us on Zoom, won't you please say hello in the chat? We love knowing that you're here. And no matter what platform you're using to join us for worship, you can find helpful information like ways to give, faith development resources for all ages, reopening plans, and more in the worship portal on our website, firstuunash.org. We're so glad that you're joining us for worship. Our opening song is by well-known UU singer-songwriter Jim Scott. Jim's songs have rich harmonies and lyrics rooted in our Unitarian Universalist principles and faith. Won't you join me, Karina, Vicky, and Gail in singing? Gather the Spirit. Gather the Spirit, harvest the power. Our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of His heart. Our trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace. Gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind. Seeds for the sowing are laid in store, nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun, winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again.
Good morning. I'm Gail Spar. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the worship associate for today. Our call to worship is called Anyone's Ministry and was written by Gordon B. McKeeman. Ministry is a quality of relationship between and among human beings that beckons forth hidden possibilities, inviting people into deeper, more constant, more reverent relationship with the world and with one another, carrying forward a long heritage of hope and liberation that has dignified and informed the human venture over many centuries. Being present with, to, and for others in their terrors and torments, in their grief, misery, and pain, knowing that those feelings are our feelings too. Celebrating the triumphs of the human spirit, the miracles of birth and life, the wonders of devotion and sacrifice. Witnessing to life-enhancing values, speaking truth to power, speaking for human dignity and equity, for compassion and aspiration, believing in life in the presence of death, struggling for human responsibility against principalities and structures that ignore humaneness and become instruments of death. It is all these and much, much more than all of them present in the wordless, the unspoken, the ineffable. It is speaking and living the highest we know and living with the knowledge that it is never as deep or as wide or as high as we wish. Whenever there is a meeting that summons us to our better selves, wherever our lostness is found, our fragments are united, our wounds begin healing, our spines stiffen, and our muscles grow strong for the task, there is ministry. Our chalice lighting was written by Jennifer Grayson, and it's called Drawn Together. We come every week, bound not by a creed or a mutual desire to please one God or many gods, yet we are drawn together by a belief that how we are in the world, who we are together, matters. We light this chalice together in the knowledge that love, not fear, can change this world. And now I'd like to tell you a story, but first I need to put on my storytelling shawl. It'll help me remember things. You see, it's got lots of words on it. There we go. Okay, I call this story The Great Cookie Quest. Taylor, Brooks, and Comer were tired but jubilant. They had just finished collecting boxes of canned goods for the local food drive, and they had the entire afternoon ahead of them to do as they pleased. You know what would be good right now, Taylor asked? Cookies. Oh, yes, said Brooks and Comer. Who's got some? Not me, said Brooks. We ate the last ones last night for dinner. We don't have any either, said Comer. But maybe my mom will make us some. Let's go ask her. Comer's mom was working at home, meeting with her office mates on Zoom. Phooey, said Comer, who knew better than to interrupt her when she was in a meeting. One of my dads is a good cook, said Brooks. I'll bet he'll make some for us. Sorry, kids, said Brooks's dad. I'm in the middle of a project. And besides, I don't think we've got all the ingredients we'd need to make cookies. Well, let's try my mom, said Taylor, hopefully. Cookies, eh? Said Mrs. Jordan, Taylor's mother. That sounds like a fun project. Why don't you all find a recipe while I finish folding the laundry? And so the three went through all the recipes they could find in print and online, looking for a cookie they would all enjoy. And finally, they found it. Oatmeal, cranberry, pecan cookies. Yum. Mrs. Jordan had finished her laundry and was about to start preparing the cookies when her phone rang. Oh, sorry, kids, she said, I have to take this call. Why don't you find all the ingredients for your recipe and I'll put it together when I'm through with it. So Taylor, Brooks, and Comer gathered the flour, brown sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, baking powder, and salt from the pantry. They found eggs and butter in the refrigerator. They had everything they needed for their recipe, except the oatmeal, cranberries, and pecans. Now what do we do, said Comer. Wait a minute, I'm pretty sure we've got oatmeal at home. That's one of my favorite breakfasts. And I was snacking on cranberries just the other day, said Brooks. I'll go get them, and I'll look for pecans too. So Brooks and Comer went back to their homes and were soon back with the oatmeal and cranberries, and together each had found just enough pecans to add to the recipe. As they walked into the kitchen, Mrs. Jordan was just finishing her phone call. She began measuring the flour, and they all heard Taylor's baby brother crying. Oh dear, said Mrs. Jordan, he's woke up from his nap. Let me go get him. Then if one of you will keep him entertained, I'll get back to work on the cookies. And she went to get the baby. You know what, said Taylor to Comer and Brooks, I think we've got this. Here's the recipe, here's the ingredients. Let's see what we can do. And so the three of them read the recipe carefully and followed each step, mixing all the ingredients together. When Mrs. Jordan came back with the baby in her arms, she was pleased to see how much they had done without her. Okay, if you want to play with baby Drew, she said, I'll take it from here. And she started to spoon dollops of cookie dough onto the greased cookie sheet. Actually, that looked like a lot of fun to the three hungry kids. And so they took turns watching Drew and dropping spoonfuls of dough on the sheet. When all the dough was on the cookie sheet, it went into the hot oven. Now there was nothing to do but wait, clean up the mess in the kitchen, which they did, all the while smelling the wonderful aroma of those cookies as they baked and imagining how good they were going to taste in just a little while. And they were not disappointed. As soon as the cookies had cooked and cooled down, each of them took their first bite. These are the best cookies I've ever had, they all said. They divided the batch into 3 equal parts, and each of them took cookies to their families, who agreed they were indeed the best cookies ever. Here's the end of our story.
Oh, thank you, Gail, for that story, both the telling of it and the writing of it. It's so good to be here with you this morning. I'm the Reverend Diane Dowgiert. My pronouns are she, her, and it is my pleasure to serve as your developmental lead minister. You may know that we share every Sunday's collection with an organization whose work outside our walls aligns with our values. Our Share the Plate partner for the month of August is Nashville International Center for Empowerment, whose mission is to ensure that refugees and immigrants living in Nashville achieve their full potential now and for generations to come. You can learn more in the worship portal at firstuunash.org, where you can also find the link to our online donation form. The offering is a sacrament of the free church. It is supported by the voluntary generosity of all who join with us. As always, your gifts, like your presence among us, are received with gratitude. we are so blessed by Holling's music each week, music that calms the soul and uplifts the spirit. And in that same spirit, I invite you into a time of prayer, that time and place where body and spirit do indeed unite once more. The words for the prayer this morning were written by my colleague, the Reverend Lynn Cox. Spirit of life, who draws us together in a web of holy relationships. Make your presence known with us and in us and among us. Remind us that we are not alone in history. Ignite us with the courage of the living tradition. Remind us that we are alone in entering the future. Anchor us with patience and perseverance. Remind us that we are not alone in our times of grief and pain. Comfort us with your spirit, manifest in human hands and voices. Remind us that we are not alone in joy and wonder. Inspire us to honor and extend the beauty we find in this world. Divine music of the universe. Let our hearts beat in diverse and harmonious rhythms, cooperating with an everlasting dance of love. May we move with the rhythms of peace. May we move with the rhythms of compassion. May we move with the rhythms of justice. Source of stars and planets and water and land, open our hearts to all of our neighbors. Open our souls to a renewal of faith. Open our hands to join in the work ahead. So be it. Blessed be. Amen.
Our reading this morning is from Elizabeth Lerner McClay, and it's called Carried Up to Bed. Wouldn't we all wish to be carried up to bed one more time? So dependent, so confident, and so cared for in that particular way, all the right reasons. We are not ill, not hurt, nor helpless. We are simply small and tender and tired. How long have parents carried their children to bed while children enjoy that passive bliss? There we lie, half asleep already, in a car or on a sofa after a late night. We could be roused, but our eyes are closed. We are less asleep than we look, more asleep than we feel. Our parent comes to fetch us up to bed and slides a strong, quiet arm under our shoulders and neck, another under our knees, and hoists us up to be carried to our rooms and our waiting sheets. We sleepily turn toward them, maybe hike an arm loosely over their shoulder and around their neck and hang on a bit. We feel them walking down the hall or stepping up the stairs, then nudging open the door, walking across the floor of the dark, familiar space. We know where we are without opening our eyes. We feel them pause by the bed to get a firmer grip and then lean over and lay us down, adjusting the sheets to tuck us in. Would that I had known that last time for what it was. Now it is my task to do the tender carry, the kiss and caress before leaving the room. That is precious too. The children know the date-stamped preciousness of being carried up to bed for what it is, and nestle into its warmth. Years will pass, and we will still feel small and tender and tired, and this gift will likewise have passed on to others, to our own and others' children. And we will each of us have then only the memory and the charge to carry on the tradition sweet burden of carrying of another. Here ends our reading.
Ministry. Ministry is all we do together in service to each other, to the larger community, and the world. The purpose of the gathered community, this thing that we call church, is to do ministry. Ministry grounded in transcendent values such as compassion, justice, and love. Ministry which invites a divine and holy presence to move among us. When I say we, I mean all who are gathered in this covenanted community to do ministry together. This ministry does not belong to any one person or any one group of people. It belongs to everyone who is part of the covenant. This is the essence of shared ministry. My thinking about shared ministry has been largely shaped by a sermon delivered by the Reverend Arvid Straube when he was serving as minister in residence at Star King School for the Ministry, which was more than 20 years ago when I was a student there, but I still remember that sermon. He urged us, young and eager ministers, to not attempt to do the ministry on our own, and not just as a means of self-preservation. The demands of ministry are far greater than any one person alone. Not only that, to do all the things that ministry requires by oneself is the equivalent of not sharing your cookies, or so said the Reverend Arvid Straube. Doing ministry by oneself is the equivalent of not sharing your cookies. When the ordained minister does all the preaching, teaching, and caring, all the leading, organizing, and praying, that minister is keeping all the sweetness, goodness, and satisfaction that comes from doing ministry to themselves. In the years since those formative experiences as a ministry student, I have sought to embody Reverend Straube's advice to share the cookies. I have found it to be true that burdens are made lighter and joys are made brighter when shared. Over the years, though, I have expanded my understanding of shared ministry to not just be about sharing the cookies, but also about sharing the making and baking of the cookies. It's also about sharing the labor and the rewards. As with cookies, there are some basic recipes for the making of a covenanted church community. Churches, like cookies, come in a wide assortment of varieties and types, yet they all require the same basic ingredients. Cookies require flour, sugar, butter, and eggs, plus some baking soda or baking powder for leavening, salt and spices for seasoning, and embellishments for added flavor and texture. Everything from fruits to nuts to chocolate. Congregations of any denomination or religious orientation begin with some basic ingredients. The basic ingredients of responsible membership, which are sometimes referred to as the 3 Ps, are these: presence, pledging, and participation. Those are the basic ingredients. Presence means regular attendance at worship, which I know is challenging these days. Worship is something we do together, not for ourselves alone. Together, we feel the bond of connection and the strength of the collective, drawing wisdom and courage from each other. Even when we are separated by distance, as we are now in this time of pandemic, worship connects us to our larger faith tradition through story, song, ritual, and words of comfort, and maybe some wisdom. It reminds us that we are all in this together. Pledging means generous financial support. It has been said that the offering is a sacrament of the free church, which is sustained by the voluntary generosity of the gathered community. This is no small thing. It truly is the offering that keeps the church free of outside control, keeping the church free to establish its own mission, priorities, and goals. More than a transactional arrangement of getting something in return, a pledge is a commitment of support, each according to their ability. Participation means service to the church itself. Everything that happens in a church is dependent on participation in everything, from governance to fundraising to maintaining the buildings and grounds, to teaching our children, to organizing special events, to showing up for social justice, to helping make Sunday worship a rich and deep experience. I know that everyone is stretched thin right now by the realities of the time that we are in. Participation in the church doesn't look like it did a year and a half ago. It's made more difficult by the necessity of doing most things remotely. These difficulties for me make each and every contribution of time and service all that much more appreciated and valued. The Reverend Elizabeth Lerner McClay offers another image of shared ministry, that of being carried up to bed. That too is shared ministry. Sometimes we are the one being carried, and sometimes, in the words of Reverend McClay, we are the one with the charge to carry on the tradition, the sweet burden of carrying another. Carrying and being carried. These are ways of participating in the life of the congregation too. So these are the basic ingredients that hold the church together: presence, pledging, and participation. Add to this mix some leavening ingredients that will make the congregation rise to fulfill its larger purpose, which is to do ministry together, to serve a greater good, to do ministry together in a way that fosters more integrity, effectiveness, love, and joy in people's lives. The Reverends Jan and Rob Eller Isaacs, who have served as co-ministers of our congregations in Oakland, California, and St. Paul, Minnesota, have always expected their members to do 3 additional things beyond the 3 Ps that I just went over. In addition to those 3, they expect every member to have a personal, sustained spiritual practice, to develop the capacity for intimacy through participation in small group ministries, and to do the work of creating justice. A spiritual practice can be any activity undertaken with mindful intent to cultivate spiritual development. So yes, it can be something traditional like meditation or yoga or prayer, and it can also be parenting or gardening or making music or spending time in nature. Anything that helps you to feel connected to something larger than yourself. Undertaken with intent and regularity, that's a spiritual practice. The opportunities for developing the capacity for vulnerability and intimacy in small group settings include things like covenant groups, social justice groups, or even serving on a board or committee. In my time with you so far, I've actually been very impressed with the level of vulnerability and care among all of the members of the groups and all of the groups that I've worked with here at First UU. Building capacity for vulnerable and intimate relationships makes it more possible to join with others in the work of justice. We can do the work of creating justice in our daily lives, being mindful of our choices and how they work either to dismantle systems of oppression or to uphold them. It can mean engaging with NOAA, Nashville Organized for Action and Hope, or Habitat for Humanity, or Room in the Inn. It takes all of us doing what we can, where we can, to bring about the beloved community we dream of. So all of this, all of these ingredients, seasoned with heaping measures of forgiveness, compassion, and grace, make for a vibrant, healthy congregation, one that is nourishing to all who share in the ministry. The embellishments come in the form of the unique gifts the members of any congregation bring, the gifts that give any congregation its own flavor and texture. We often think of the gifts people bring as being skill from their occupations or their hobbies, skills which are definitely needed. But what is needed at least as much are the spiritual gifts referred to as fruits of the Spirit in the book of Galatians in the Christian scriptures. Those fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. We need those gifts as part of our recipe for a vibrant congregation too. Mix it all together. Presence, pledging, participation, spiritual practice, capacity for intimacy, working for justice, forgiveness, compassion, grace. Add the gifts we all bring, bake it in the warmth of the flaming chalice, and all of the ingredients meld together to become something greater than the sum of its parts. And this, my friends, is ministry, shared ministry. When we bring our whole and holy selves to the endeavor, there's more than enough to share. In closing today, in addition to the images of shared ministry as baking cookies and the image of being carried up to bed, I offer one more image for your consideration. Migratory geese who fly in V formation. Scientists have found that geese flying in V formation can cover up to 70% more distance than any bird flying alone. The lead bird provides guidance and direction while also reducing air drag for those who follow, allowing the flock to travel greater distances without getting too tired. Each goose in the formation gains lift from the wings of the one ahead. At some point, the lead goose will fall back and another will take the lead, so that no one goose bears the brunt of the foremost position. Not only that, if one of the geese in the formation becomes sick or injured along the way, one or two others will accompany the injured one safely to the ground and then wait until they are well enough to join another formation. This is shared ministry, sharing both the labor and rewards of baking cookies together, of sometimes being carried and sometimes doing the carrying, of sharing leadership, of having each other's back, of making sure that every one of us makes it safely home. We would be one. The words of our closing hymn today call us into the covenant of our shared ministry with a pledge of ever greater love and service. May it be so. May we make it so through our living.
The lyrics for our closing hymn, set to the tune Finlandia by Jean Sibelius, were written by Unitarian minister Samuel Anthony Wright for Unitarian and Universalist youth at their Continental Convention of 1953 to 54. As Jackie James notes in Between the Lines, at this conference they merged to form the Liberal Religious Youth of the United States and Canada, setting a model for the Unitarian Universalist denominational consolidation in 1961. I hope you will join me, accompanied by Holling and Gale, in the singing. We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other, to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which bends our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
Our chalice extinguishing are the words of Elizabeth Sell Jones. Won't you join me? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
I leave you today with words that were written by John Morgan. Let us bless and keep one another. Let kindness rule in our hearts and compassion in our lives until we meet again. This service has ended. May our service to the world continue renewed. Go in peace, go in love.